Hey everyone, J-Boy here. I'm quite under the weather this week, but I'm wearing a shirt that has bubbles on it, so that's like on theme. That's like dot and bubble. Dot and bubble. I'm gonna be honest. I expected not to like this one. I thought it looked annoying. I thought, we'd had two great episodes in a row. We were due a stinker, and if it was going to be any of them, it would be this one. It didn't seem like it had much going for it. So my expectations were low, and I don't know if it was because of that or just because of the episode itself, but I really enjoyed this one. I don't know. I'm really shocked. It kind of ended, and or no, as it was going, I was like, hang on, is this good? Is this interesting? Is this doing stuff? And I liked Dot and Bubble, and I'd like to dive into why. The setup of this episode feels fairly standard, like the perfect, seemingly perfect future society that has some sort of sinister secret behind it. That's something that I think is often very cool, but it's not a unique idea. We've seen a lot of it in sci-fi over the years, a lot of it specifically in Doctor Who, and I think it's one of those ones that could go either way. Like, it's not enough of a incredible premise to automatically be a great episode, but it's a cool enough idea that you can get some really interesting vibes out of it. So in this one, it's the tech that is causing the trouble, and that's a real problem in this society because everyone's glued to their damn phones, and I think that was the red flag of this episode, really, was that we were kind of on our way to some really boomery commentary on kids these days, they're always scrolling on their Instagram, always looking at those damn screens. They don't know how to do anything but to charge their phone, that kind of thing. So I think I was preparing myself to be lectured by a 60-year-old Instagram addict about, why social media was bad. But you know what? I didn't even feel like Gen Z were particularly targeted here. It felt like, even as it was doing the more techie commentary earlier on, it didn't feel like kids these days. It just kind of felt like the tech was being commented on, and the kind of the alienating, isolating tech of things like the Apple Vision Pro and things like that. So I was pleasantly surprised by that angle of everything. I think maybe the closest it got to feeling a little out of touch was just the idea that they couldn't walk without their directions. That kind of felt a bit silly, and it felt a little inconsistent as well, the logic of that. But I guess it was just visual comedy. It was a gag. And I'm happy to be reminded of the film WALL-E as often as they want to remind me of that, to be honest. For most of the episode, we follow Lindy as our primary character. In fact, I say most of the episode, I think she is in literally every single scene, so she really is our protagonist there, and I think she's a really interesting protagonist to have. I don't know, I think she's annoying and self-centered, and she can be a bit unpleasant, but in a way that at the start feels kind of harmless, but at the same time she's got this stupidity, and she's part of this ridiculous society and culture that makes her so naive and so moronic that you kind of she's quite sympathetic in that. She's like, oh god, oh, stupid Lindy, poor Lindy being part of this ridiculous world. It's not her fault that she's like this. So I think you do root for her a little bit, and I think it's Callie Cook playing her, and I think it's such an impressive ability to play this kind of alienating character that we are then forced to spend all this time with. It's a really interesting choice from the script to go, all right, we're going to invent this character who is kind of not really relatable in any way, and they are going to have to carry the episode on their back, as the only main character, in a lot of these scenes, the one person we're spending time with. So I think to set out to do that is very ambitious, and it's carried off very well by Callie Cook. I think she realizes the character really authentically when she could be just a kind of cartoon character, really. Whereas she does feel like there are multiple layers to her, and I think all of those sides of Lindy are brought to life very believably, and in a way that you do buy into her as a protagonist, and you were kind of taken on that journey with her. And I think it makes the kind of shifts from the more harmless to the more actively harmful, it makes them all the more compelling because she's kind of taken us on that journey very naturally. It's a great name too, Lindy Pepperbean. I mean, I think there were a lot of great sci-fi names in this episode, and I imagine Russell had a lot of fun coming up with them. It's quite fun just, seeing them on the screen and putting silly names to silly faces. And I will say I kind of struggled at the start with how those interactions on the Dot and Bubble felt. It was very jarring. It was very clearly, each line, each person on the interaction had recorded their lines separately, and so and obviously the lines are weird and jarring and futuristic-y. They're using fake words. They don't have the right words to say for things, and so that at first was like, okay, this feels off, but I think it's something you adapt to, and it's something that you're like, oh, okay, this is. It's right to feel off. Like the fact that they feel like they're in separate rooms recording their lines separately, it adds to the isolation of everything, and it adds to this unpleasant, uneasy vibe from the whole thing, even when the interactions are nice. So I think it's nice to be able to point to like weird, dodgy dialogue scenes and go, yeah, that was deliberate. And I think the character of Ricky September is elevated by having had all that kind of awkwardness, because, there's the existing charisma of Thomas Rhys Harris there, but it's kind of elevated by the fact that we're also going, oh, thank God, a normal person who talks normal. And, that's a refreshing element of that. And, you're reminded that that's how human beings talk. So I think I really liked Ricky. I felt, he has that big speech kind of towards the end of the episode where he does the whole, I'm going to get you out of here, I'm going to put this in, and we're going to get to safety, and the music swells, and it's this big epic hero moment. And to me, it really struck me as like one of those moments that gets undercut or subverted like during the moment or just after the moment or something like that. I don't know, you kind of expect, the character's like, don't worry, Lindy, we're going to get you out of here and it's all going to be okay. And then like he gets crushed, like the ceiling caves in on him. That's to me where it felt like it was going. Or he like reveals himself to be behind everything. Like he's working for the slugs, or the slugs are working for him, or something like that. That like, you feel like everything's going to be okay because you're in the hands of Ricky September, but then they pull that out from underneath you. But no, they let that hero moment stand for him, and I kind of thought, oh, interesting. Maybe he is just a great guy. And yeah, he is. There's no twist. The episode goes, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this guy, actually. It's you. It's the main character. It's the protagonist that you guys have been following. It's her that sucks. That was such a shock. Like, Lindy betraying Ricky and throwing him under the bus or in front of the Dot. It was so shocking. And so, I mean, because, I don't know, we have an expectation of how a protagonist should behave, and it's not like that. Like a Doctor-like protagonist, you don't expect Sally Sparrow to throw Larry Nightingale in front of a weeping angel to save herself. It's incredibly subversive and shocking, and I think the fact that Ricky's death was something so viscerally brutal and like, oh fuck, like it really had, like, that would be a horrible death in isolation, but the fact that it's built on this surprise betrayal is really cool. And I think that sudden realization that this self-centered, vapid character that we've been following is like that to a dangerous degree, and like it's not just kind of narcissism, it's like she's a psychopath, like she will just, or a sociopath, I don't know that kind of term, but like it's not just a case of like, what are you all talking about, I only care about myself. It's like, I only care about myself, and I will, kill my idol here or anyone to save myself. I thought that was great, and I thought that the sudden, maybe it wasn't even a shift in vibe, but a sudden realization that the bad vibes were coming from inside the house, I thought that was really strong. And then moving that into the scene with the Doctor, and it's so rare for us, because we often follow the Doctor and the Companion, it's so rare for us to know more than those two characters, like that much more, like know something so important that they don't for so long, really, and they never find out. And we get the sort of typical, like, oh, the Doctor and the Companion are saving the day, this escape that we've been building towards all episode has been successful, and this main character has got to safety, and it's hollow and it's twisted, and the music is taking this kind of conventional format and making it feel twisted and wrong and unpleasant. And it reminded me of like, in like Waters of Mars, where you've got that typical Doctor Save the Day scene, but it's like it's wrong and bad because of how the Doctor saved the day. It's like that, but it's about it's the subversion here is that it's who the Doctor saved, and in this case, kind of unknowingly at that point, and then it just piles on the uncomfortableness and the twistedness, and just gets even worse by revealing that they're all racists. My experience with that reveal kind of hilariously mirrored the scene from Community when they find out the trampoline man is racist, and they go, God, that came out of nowhere, and then they go, actually, hang on, no it didn't. There were lots of signs scattered throughout the episode, and I'm not the only person to have made this comparison. I thought it as I watched the episode. I went and screen recorded the clip. I was like, you know what, I'll hold off. I won't spoil it for people. And then, I checked back Twitter, and there's already a hit tweet with it, and a couple of other people quoting it and things like that. So clearly everyone who'd seen that episode of Community had kind of made that connection. But yeah, suddenly all these things that you hadn't even really registered didn't make sense made sense. I mean, I say I hadn't registered them, and I don't think that was necessarily me being an oblivious white guy about it. I mean, the problem with being an oblivious white guy is that you don't know how oblivious you are, but I think for a lot of these things that you're able to find other explanations for them. Like, for example, the fact Lindy kind of immediately distrusts the Doctor but is more open to hearing from Ruby Sunday. I think that was something I had put down to like, oh, you know what, this is a cool character moment from Ruby there. She's found a way to get onto Lindy's level, she's found a way to be authoritative and direct, but in a way that's still warm and not in a way that kind of puts off this person who clearly doesn't want to be challenged or kind of have her way of life changed. And I was thinking, the Doctor came in kind of condescending and she didn't respond well to that. So this is a cool thing from Ruby, but obviously that's not why Ruby worked and the Doctor didn't. That was something that you had a kind of in the moment explanation for, that then looking back you're like, oh shit, no, she was just being racist. The same goes for like Lindy saying something along the lines of like, oh, I just thought you all looked the same. I thought you were not the same guy. I thought I was just... That raised an eyebrow from me, but more in a sense of like, why'd she say that? That feels an unfortunate thing to say to a black guy, but not in the sense... At that point, I didn't think that's what the episode was doing. I should have learned at that point, but I didn't. I kind of had a preconceived idea of what the episode was. And I think like that also fed into the fact that I noticed that there were exclusively white people, but I kind of took it at face value as just doing that kind of, retro future trope, that aesthetic of everyone in the future is blonde and tall and good looking, and I just kind of assumed it was doing that rather than actually stopping to examine that and go, well, hang on, if that's the case, if everyone's perfect, what kind of fucked up eugenics must have happened along the way to lead to this, and the fact that the episode was actually doing more to unpack that trope than it was to just depict it. That was lost on me in the moment, but obviously with hindsight you go, oh no, it was doing stuff there. Other stuff, there were moments that I suppose should have raised eyebrows, but I kind of put them down to leaps in logic that came from a slightly shoddy script. And the problem is there are leaps in logic that actually in this episode aren't clues, and I feel are slightly from a bit of a shoddy moment in the script. There's a bit where they're all talking and trying to figure out what is actually happening with the slugs, and they say, well, maybe they're leaving us till last, and the Doctor goes, well, that would mean they have a list. And it's like, would it really necessarily mean that? Like, I don't know. And then he makes the jump to list very quickly, but the jump from list to alphabetical list he treats as a really big deal, where to me the jump to list at all is the more the more significant jump there. And he does the same when they're like, oh, maybe if this isn't an external thing and it's coming from the system, that means the dots are sentient, and it's not a case of like, oh, the person who built the system hates you, or something has kind of hacked the system from within or something like that. It's no, the dots have achieved sentience. That was the first thing they jumped to, and it turned out to be true. So there were these kind of logical leaps in the episode that weren't kind of signposts to some sort of twist, some sort of reveal that you then go, so when Lindy goes, "Are you two in the same room? Oh God, what?" and treats that like a major betrayal, I was like, that's a bit weird. I don't quite understand why she would feel that, but I think because because I hadn't really raised my eyebrow properly about the other ones, I wasn't meant to dig into the other logical leaps. There was no reason why I would treat that one as any different. It just so happens that with hindsight, that one is more of a clue. As for the kind of racism reveal scene, I'm obviously not the person to comment on how well that was all handled. I think the criticism that, the first Black Doctor's first experience with racism probably should be written by a black person and not, a 60-year-old white man. That feels like a very legitimate complaint to me, and I think hopefully going forward it's something that Russell listens to, and he thinks, yeah, maybe we should get some people of colour to write this Doctor that isn't a white man like Russell is. But I think within the episode, I feel like I can comment on the effectiveness of that, and I thought it really was an effective moment, and I think Ncuti is so good in that scene. He's stellar. The pain and the desperation and the shock, the fact he laughs at the ridiculousness of it, and he finds that kind of, it's like a laugh of shock, and then that turning into rage and this incredible disappointment at humanity at their worst, and that he's kind of facing the brunt of that now. I thought that was really interesting, and I wondered if it needed more of a kind of dialogue driven discussion, but I wonder if that would just turn into like Orphan 55, where he goes, "Racism is bad, and now I truly understand that, and you all need to not be racist." Maybe that's kind of what it would have turned into. So just turning it into this kind of very, it's not driven by plot and words. It's driven by this raw emotion from the character, and it's such a strength of his character that through all of that, he is, the Doctor in him is still begging them to let him save them, and they don't deserve it, and he probably knows that they don't deserve it, but he wants to save them still, and he can't believe that they're throwing that away over this insane bigotry. Praising her almost feels like missing the point, but I thought Ruby in the kind of background of that scene was really lovely. She almost looks like she's going to be sick at the shock of the reality of this society that they've found themselves trying to help. I thought that was really strong, and I think just within the episode as an ending, it's so interesting because it recontextualizes everything you've seen. Suddenly the slugs are heroes. Suddenly the general kind of social messaging of it isn't a case of like, everyone's stuck on their phones in a bubble. It's something more specific. It's more targeted at kind of a specific type of online echo chamber, really. And I think that's so interesting that kind of it like that the whole episode can flip on its head. I think that's really good stuff. I guess a few miscellaneous points before I properly conclude. The CG effect of the bubble was something that I wasn't spending the whole episode going, "Whoa, what great CG," but I wasn't ever questioning that it was there. I think it was like, I was just like, yeah, she's got that tech. It's just switched on. That's where it is, and I think that makes it all the more impressive. Really, it wasn't like a showy effect, even though it was so like omnipresent. It was just something that you really accepted as real, and I think part of that was from Callie actually, and how well she sold that in the performance. Like the eye lines, you never questioned that she was looking at those screens when obviously in reality she wasn't. I like the slugs, I suppose, the Antifa slugs. I like the fact that design-wise that they are the perfect kind of open mouth that someone can walk straight in, without paying attention and just be kind of absorbed like that. I think it's a good design. I think they're realised very nicely in the episode. And we have to talk about Penny Pepperbean. This is the part of every week where we talk about Susan Twist. It's a very fun mystery. The Doctor kind of clocking her as the ambulance interface, and Ruby, I mean, that makes sense. The Doctor spent the most time dealing with the ambulances there. Ruby was kind of dead for a lot of it. But Ruby, it wasn't like last week where she went, "Do I know you?" It was like, I've seen this woman before. And I think the fact that there was an escalation from 73 yards the events of that episode did not happen. So the fact there's been an escalation from that to now, it's like, oh, is there some part of her that remembers some of that episode? And I think I said I don't want them to revisit any of the concepts from 73 Yards, but I'm fully open to the idea of some parts of that kind of, in a timey-wimey sense, being retained by Ruby. Because, yeah, I know people have said, well, she's seen this woman's face before, but I felt like this was more than that in a way that would kind of require having seen her last week. So, I don't know, interesting. So yeah, in conclusion, I really didn't expect to like this one. I thought it would be smug and annoying, and I thought having a Dr. Light episode 2 weeks in a row was kind of insane. And I mean, on paper, I still do, but something about Ncuti in this episode, like, he felt like a powerful and constant enough presence in this episode for it to not feel like he was majorly absent. And I think it's a testament to how well Russell and Ncuti have characterised the 15th Doctor, in that I feel he's established himself well enough at this stage that, like, missing out on him for 2 episodes for 2 weeks here, it's not like, oh, this is coming at a very formative time in his career, his Doctor tenure, you know, we really need to get more of him in these key early moments. It's like, no, he's the Doctor. We know him. We know this character by now. And if they want to get a bit funny with that and take him away from us for a bit, that works, which I think is really interesting. And I do think Russell does need to stop playing with the formula quite so much, hopefully going into the next 3 episodes. I mean, finales are already weird, but, like, I hope... I don't know. I think... I've said variations of this before, but, like, breaking the mold is most impactful when there's a mold to break to begin with. So I would like them to dial it back a bit, you know, drop this TARDIS team in a faulty space station or a base under siege or something like that. I think they said something in Doctor Who Unleashed that, like, oh, in the old days you could just do, you know, there's a factory and there's a Cyberman or something, and that would be enough, but now you have to do more. And I don't think you necessarily have to do more. I think some of these like rule breaking episodes have been so cool, but they'd be cooler if there were rules that had been established earlier on. And I think that all being said, I wouldn't have changed this episode. So that's me being a fucking hypocrite there. Like, I, on paper, very much believe that we should get things back on track so that any kind of derailing feels impactful. But yeah, I liked this one and I'm happy we had it. So maybe you have to disregard everything I've said there. It started out like it was just going to be a fine example of the type of episode that it is, or the type of episode that it seemed to be. But it ended up being far more interesting than I felt it had any right to be, really, going in. And I think it's a very funny outcome that's true. But it's full of these shocking moments that, again, once you've seen them, it changes everything that you've seen already. You know, you go back to the beginning of the episode, it's a different episode. It's 2 episodes in one. It's kind of, you watch it for the first time and it's one thing. Once you go back to the beginning, you can never watch it the same way again. And I think that's so cool. And I think I've seen some people say, oh, the twist, you know, came out of nowhere, it was lazy, it was, you know, it's just a weird kind of forced U-turn. But it's like, it's baked into the whole episode, man. It's the point of the episode. And... you know, the fact you didn't realise that. I'm not saying that, like, if you didn't see the racism reveal coming, you're stupid. I mean, maybe that's true. If it is, I'm stupid. But I think at the very least, if you kind of post-reveal of racism, if you still go, well, that came out of nowhere. There were no signs pointing to that. That's stupid, right? That's kind of willfully stupid. And I think, you know, being blindsided by it is one thing, but not being able to then go, actually, this did come from somewhere. It's my fault that I didn't see it coming, not the episodes. So this didn't come from nowhere. It didn't. It isn't a weird tacked-on thing to an existing episode. It is the episode, you know? I really like that this was all for nothing, you know? It was just a waste of everyone's time. This whole escape doesn't matter. It was, you know, they might just get squished or eaten or, you know, immediately killed once they go out in their boat and who cares if they do? You know, I think that's such an odd way to end a Doctor Who story, and in such an interesting and good way. Dylan Holmes Williams might be the director to watch for this era. I felt like this episode and 73 Yards, there was source, there was style behind the camera, and yeah, it was watching Unleashed going, oh, same guy, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, gotta praise the direction there. Yeah, I think I've kind of spoken about everything I want to speak about. I'm really interested in hearing opinions on this one. I don't know how I rate it among the others. I don't know if it's... I think I probably prefer 73 Yards, and I probably prefer Boom. This episode's almost doing more than Boom, but Boom's kind of doing what it's doing very well. So, but this is a good season 1 episode, and I think that's ridiculous. Like, if you told me that, if you told me last week that I'd be considering, what's this one called? Dot and Bubble, alongside Boom, it's like ridiculous. But I'm so happy. I'm so happy to have been pleasantly surprised. Were any of you pleasantly surprised? Did this episode, give you exactly what you wanted, exactly what you expected, positively, negatively? How did you feel about the twist? Am I stupid for seeing it as a twist? Yeah. Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy. If there was a weird cut there, it was because I started coughing. There's probably quite a few of those throughout the video, so I'm sorry that I'm not on tip-top condition, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next week for Rogue. It's got the King from Hamilton in it. He's cool. He sings good. He's probably not going to sing in the episode, but I'm excited. I really have run out of steam. Like, subscribe. Thank you so much for the support on the other videos. I'm so happy that my channel is getting nice attention again. Love you lots. See you soon. Love you lots.